If I could only bring one piece of lifting gear into the gym with me, it would have to be straps. The basic principle is that if you don't want the muscles of your forearm or your grip strength to be the first thing that fail in a lift, you should use straps. While doing heavy back training, it's therefore advisable to use straps. I've got a pair of very basic straps here. To use them, you wrap the tongue of the strap around the bar, handle, or dumbbell, and you're basically gripping onto the strap rather than directly onto the handle. The late great John Meadows recommends that you only use straps on your heaviest back sets.
Should you use straps? Should you not use straps? I would advise you on your heaviest sets to use straps because your grip's just not going to be as strong as your lats. So you're really going to shortchange your lats in terms of using the most weight that you can with your lats because your grip will give out.
This is a list of 20 tips, tricks, and hacks that I've picked up over the years that will hopefully make you a better lifter. And even if you have been lifting for a while, some of these could still be useful. Believe it or not, gyms are friendlier places than you might think. The mainstream media depiction of gyms makes you think that if you go and work out while out of shape, people will stare at you and they'll be really judgmental. But my experience has been the polar opposite. Gym bros are some of the most encouraging and positive people I've ever met. Whenever I've asked to work in with someone or asked someone for a spot or even asked for form advice, all I've got is positive vibes. The first lesson that everyone learns in the gym is you need to add weight to your exercises to get bigger and stronger over time. As your body adapts to a certain weight, you have to increase the stimulus to drive further adaptation. However, I think it's important that we take a step back and take a long-term view of progressive overload. You'll simply burn out or snap your shit up if you add weight to the bar literally every single time you train. Instead, think about your training over the course of months or even years. The general trend should be towards lifting more weight. But this doesn't mean adding weight every session. Sometimes you do have to take one step back to ultimately take 2 steps forward. This is why I generally think if you're in your first 2 years of lifting, you shouldn't program for yourself. Good programs will take gradual progressive overload as well as recovery and reduced loading into account. In spite of your best efforts, nearly everyone who trains with weights consistently will injure themselves at some point. However, there are lots of measures you can take to minimize this risk, like active mobility before lifting and static stretching after lifting. Also, load management is really important for mitigating injury. Basically, all injuries in the gym do heal eventually, provided they're not catastrophic. Remember that your body is incredibly resilient, and make sure that you're taking regular deloads. And on that note, I am a huge fan of having planned deloads in your program. I've got a bit of heat online for this in the past, but I honestly think if you're training sufficiently hard enough, you do need a lighter training week once every 4 to 7 weeks. And incidentally, there is research that suggests that women recover a little bit faster than men, so they might need to deload less often. But I think trial and error is important here to see how often you need to deload. The more I read about and watch videos about the role that supplements play in building muscle and losing fat, the more I think that they aren't as necessary as people think. Supplements just make up a fraction of your results in the gym. The training, diet, sleep quality, and stress management will account for the vast majority of your progress in the gym. If I could only recommend one supplement, it would definitely be creatine monohydrate. It has been shown time and time again to help with gym performance and building muscle. Just take a teaspoon of the stuff a day and you're good for supplements. You can produce a phenomenal muscle building stimulus with just your body weight. Slow and controlled push-ups and pull-ups will basically hit every muscle in the upper body. Strict planks are great for the core. Walking lunges, Nordic hamstring curls, and single leg bodyweight calf raises will challenge the lower body. Just because you have access to loads of gym equipment doesn't mean you can't build muscle by creatively using just your body weight. A very time efficient way to train is to use supersets. These are basically 2 exercises back to back with no rest. However, I would advise supersetting 2 exercises for the same muscle group. Invariably, the second exercise suffers because of fatigue. Instead, I like doing antagonist supersets. Biceps with triceps, quad isolation with hamstring isolation, or supersetting a chest exercise with a back exercise. My rule of thumb for supersetting is there should be no overlapping muscle groups between the 2 exercises I'm supersetting. You can get really creative with this. You can superset lateral raises with walking dumbbell lunges or lat pull downs with overhead presses. Essentially, supersets are for when we want to train more efficiently without sacrificing technique. And on that note, I believe that in the gym, technique is everything. I'm a big fan of the Renaissance periodization motto of no bad reps. I think one of the most important skills a lifter can develop is consistent and safe technique on every exercise. It will help with mind-muscle connection, knowing your training, and therefore choice of weight is accurate and consistent. It'll mean that you can build more muscle with less weight because you aren't cheating, which will in turn turn decrease the risk of injury. A strategy that you can use to improve your workouts instantly is to control the eccentric component of every rep. Eccentric is just the technical term for the lowering of the weight. I think a lot of people forget that they're also building muscle when they're lowering the weight, not just when they're contracting their muscles concentrically. Training with slow, deliberate eccentrics will likely result in more gains more efficiently. Also, training like this will force you to lower the weight and therefore you'll reach muscular failure faster, which we all know is beneficial for muscle building. And there is no practical limit to how slow you can lower a weight. Take a moderately heavy weight for curls and try to have 5-second eccentrics, and you'll have a skin-splitting bicep pump and residual soreness for days. Fitness industry marketing has lied to you about cardio. Every ad about losing fat is about moving more and eating less, as if cardio is this magical pill that if you take enough of it, you'll get shredded for summer. I could do an hour on the Stairmaster at a pretty decent pace and probably only burn around 500 calories. But I could smash 1,000 calories 5 minutes after walking into Mackie D's. The best way to lose body fat is to educate yourself about the calorie content of food, and then track your calories so that you know you're eating in a deficit every day. Cardio is a phenomenal tool to help supplement this calorie deficit, and it's obviously incredibly important for your health and your lungs, but it's not going to immediately make you skinny. I'm not saying cardio is bad or unhelpful, I'm just saying it's not the best tool as your main tool for losing body fat. Warming up for every set is incredibly important. Doing a few lighter sets before you get to your working weight will help lubricate the joints and fill them up with synovial fluid, and radically reduce your risk of injury. This is particularly important on big compound lifts. On my heavy deadlift days, I can sometimes do 5 or even 6 warm-up sets before I get to my first working set. For lighter accessory and or isolation work, I'd still recommend warming up, even if it's just 1 warm-up set before you get to the working weight.
A lot of gyms don't have 1/8 plates. The smallest plate they have for barbells are 2.5 kilos or about 5 pounds. These little guys are incredibly useful and versatile when it comes to progressive overload. If you want to gradually add weight in the smallest possible increments, these are vital. Bench presses and overhead presses are often very difficult to progress on, so having small plates is a godsend. And for PR attempts, you might want to even consider getting 0.5 kilo plates, because every little bit of weight you can lift counts. And most cable stacks go up in increments of 2.5 kilos or 5 pounds, so adding one of these fractional plates to the stack can help you progressively overload more gradually and push back plateaus.
If you're a gym bro on a budget but you still want to show off your arms and shoulders, you can make a pretty decent tank top on a budget with a baggy old t-shirt. I flip the t-shirt inside out and then cut along the seams of the sleeves. If you want to be really extra, you could tie-dye it. If you've seen any of my content before, you've definitely seen me in one of my colorful homemade tie-dye tanks.
My friends give me a hard time for this, but one of the best things I've ever bought to help me load up the deadlift bar is the Dead Wedge. It's a cheap, low-tech answer to the deadlift jack that can fit in your bag. It's basically a doorstop that you roll the plates onto, which allows you to rack the bar without tweaking your back in the process. I think this bit of kit is so useful that it deserves its own review video. But for now, I'll just leave a link in the description where you can get your own one for $15 to $20.
There are no must-do exercises. If you're training for powerlifting or weightlifting, obviously this is wrong. But if you're training just to look and feel better, there are many different ways to get there. Don't like flat barbell pressing? Use dumbbells. Don't like free weight overhead pressing? Use a machine. Skull crushers hurt your elbows? Just do a cable tricep extension or JM press. And I'm not saying you shouldn't attempt to learn difficult technical exercises like a back squat or a deadlift, because I genuinely believe that the basics are the best way to build a strong muscular base. But if you really dread having to do a particular exercise, there is nearly always a solid alternative.
And to immediately contradict myself, if I only had one tool to use to build muscle for the rest of my life, it would be a barbell. Not because barbells are the best tool for every exercise, far from it, but because they're an incredibly versatile piece of equipment. With barbells, you can basically train every single muscle group in an efficient and effective way for years. You can do this with just a barbell, plates, a squat rack, and a bench. But don't get me wrong, cables and machines are also amazing tools. I've heard that 7-time Mr. Olympia Phil Heath barely touched barbells later on in his career. But for the average gym goer, however, bars are goated.
A week off or even 2 weeks off from the gym won't kill your gains. If school, work, university, or some other commitment means you have to take time off, there are studies that show that it takes up to 2 weeks of inactivity for you to start losing strength and muscle, as long as you start training immediately after the break. If you do need an extended break, however, muscle memory is a hell of a drug. You're likely to put on the size and strength faster than you put it on in the first place. Or if you do have a trip planned and you need to take time off for some other reason, try use this time as a deload. If you've ever lifted weights before, you've felt DOMS. Delayed onset muscle soreness is typically the result of a new or novel training stimulus, and it can leave you feeling wrecked the next day. It is normal to experience some soreness, but as your body adapts over the weeks of a training plan, this soreness should decrease. However, it is important to differentiate between DOMS and potentially injury-threatening soreness. Research suggests that soreness should only last for about 4 days, with peak soreness happening on the second day. You should be able to train the sore muscle again on said 4th day. Any soreness beyond day 4 could be a sign of potential injury. If I could only give one piece of dietary advice for lifters who are struggling to build muscle, it would be this: just add protein. If creatine monohydrate is a supplement that I think everyone should take, protein powder would be a close second. All food falls into one of or a combination of 3 macronutrients: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient, meaning that it will make you feel fuller than carbohydrates or fats. Protein is also directly responsible for building new muscle through the process of muscle protein synthesis. Eating more protein will help you build muscle, but it will also probably help with overeating. You don't need to follow an intense meal plan. Just shoot for 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day.